Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I guess they're still hungry. That's all right, we have food. Of course, welcome to our annual meet and greet forum right here inside the West Indian Social Club. You all know election is coming up, and that's what we're here for, to make sure we get yourself acquainted with many of these political leaders that are in our community. My name is Donovan Longmore. I will be your MC for the evening, and we want to meet and greet everyone. But before we do that, we always give thanks first. So in about now, we're about to call Reverend Canon Wilberforce Austin to the stage so he can bless this evening for us. Mr. Austin.
Let us pray. Most merciful God, we assemble in your name, asking your blessing upon all present here this afternoon and those seeking elected office. We thank you, Lord, that they are concerned about the welfare of our communities and of the city of Hartford. Give them, we pray, the wisdom and understanding to be able to contribute to the growth and prosperity of this city. Grant them the ability to perform whatever tasks they may be called upon to perform. Bless all who are willing to commit themselves to this enrichment of your creation. This we ask through your Son, our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, Reverend Austin. Now I'm going to ask one of the moderators to pass the offering basket so I can collect. Amen. All right, next, ladies and gentlemen, this beautiful establishment, we're going to welcome on stage and have a welcome to you guys from none other than our very own president of the West Indian Social Club, Mr. Richard T. Gordon. Give him a round of applause. He's come to the stage.
Mr. Master of Ceremonies, members and invited guests, as well as all the candidates for elected office. Good evening. My purpose here this evening is quite simple. It's only to extend a warm West Indian Social Club greeting to you. If my memory serves me correctly, this is the second installment of our meet and greet program. I was president back in 2010, and that particular program, the initial one, was also chaired by Mr. Dermot Brown. And I'd like you to give him a round of applause because he does a really fine job. Ladies and gentlemen, these are serious times. I don't have to tell you that. We're living in times where people's children are kidnapped and interned in camps. These are times when we're beset by heightened immigration scrutiny. We're experiencing times when there are cuts in education budgets, when there are enormous tax cuts for the rich, and a concomitant attack upon Obamacare, Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicare. The United States, if my memory serves me correctly, each election cycle, we turn out less than 50%. I think that's among the top 5 in the industrialized world, so to speak. So this meet and greet program is the West Indian Social Club's small contribution, if you will, in trying to right that wrong. It's important to vote. We believe so, and we hope you share that sentiment also. So, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for being here this evening. The candidates are here, and it's your responsibility to ask them, if you can, about the issues that concern you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gordon. Well, you heard him talk about the man who single-handedly put this together with his committee. And ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have him come now and talk. But before I do that, let me just give you a brief synopsis of who he really is. Mr. Dermot H. Brown was born in Kingston, Jamaica, where he attended Halfway Tree Primary School and, of course, Woodgrove College. He worked in the government services in Jamaica before migrating to the United States to pursue higher education. Having reached Hartford, he enrolled at University of Connecticut, where he majored in political science and minored in economics. He obtained a BA degree in College of Arts, Liberal Arts and Science in 1972, and graduate work at Trinity College in Hartford. He's a trailblazer and a visionary leader who became very, very effective in the West Indian community and the greater Hartford community as a whole. He has made several significant contributions to social, economic, and educational development in the community where he founded himself. He joined the West Indian Social Club in 1972 and has been active in every aspect of the organization ever since. Of course, you can find him on the West Indian Independence Celebration Committee, the Educational Committee, and the West Indian Foundation. He is a founding member of the West Indian Foundation, which addresses educational and cultural needs of the West Indian community. He also organized several and co-chaired several West Indian Task Force committees, and Mr. Brown is a founding member of Nyesha and has served as conventional chairman. He's also the chair of the Community Economic Growth for Jamaica, and which is an arm of Nyesha. Under his auspices, he recommended that we made extensive dock, cruise ship ports, and of course, port in Ocho Rios and successful model flights. He's also the founder and president and CEO of International Foundation of the Exoneration of Marcus Mosiah Garvey, who is, of course, the first hero of Jamaica. In November 2011, Dermot received a citation from U.S. Senator John Larson for his leadership efforts and determination in trying to get Marcus Garvey exonerated. Mr. Brown was successful in establishing the Marcus Garvey Garden on Blue Hills Avenue area of Hartford. He's now here, ladies and gentlemen, and in 1995, the Connecticut General Assembly awarded him a citation in recognition of community work and bringing business and community together. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for the man himself, the Honorable Dermot H. Brown.
Thank you very much. I am not going to be talking very long because they call me a long meter when I get a mic. But I just simply want to say a few words. This community is a community of people that came from Jamaica, Caribbean people, Trinidad, Tobago, Barbados, and Kitts, Nevis, and these areas around Hartford and Greater Hartford. But I just really want to tell you that the people that are here from the Caribbean, Puerto Rico part of it, although Puerto Rico are citizens of the United States, many of us have to, and you know that the immigration situation is what it is right now. And it's not an easy job for any of these candidates that's running. It's tough. And it's midterm election all over the United States. And in some areas of the states, there are congressmen running, there are judges running, there are senators running, and many other folks that are responsible for the welfare of our people and government. So I'm not going to preach longer, but I'm not a minister either. But when I say preach longer, I mean that talk, talk, talk. But my commitment, ladies and gentlemen, is for people like you and me and others. Jamaica is out of many, one. Out of many, one people. Because there in Jamaica we have, and of course the colonial times, we've been through that, and we're independent and so on and so forth. But nevertheless, we are people that have strength, resilience. We're people, the farm workers contributed to the war, Second World War, and so on and so forth. But the issues here that we want to talk more particular about for the candidates' sake is health, immigration, education, gun controls in the schools. Just a few items that we want to talk about. Small business and the redemption of a business that are in our area. Foreclosure, taxes, and we all have to pay taxes, no matter who. And after that, there's going to be a simple question and answer period for the audience to ask you questions. But it's simple to meet and greet all of you. So we want to thank you very much for coming. And we know that you candidates are pressed for time. You have to appear here and there. But this is nonpartisan. We have the Republicans and the Democrats, nonpartisan, because the organization can't be involved in politics that kind of way. But the individuals go after them. And we have a registration booth outside there at the back. They're waving their hands. And the purpose of all of this is to get people to vote. Because one vote, one single vote, could make a difference. One single vote could make a difference, win or to lose. So thank you very much. And on behalf of the committee, which you'll hear more about, Judy Williams has been doing an excellent job, and our folks that are on our committee. So God bless you. All the best. Have a good time. And we have some refreshments over there. At some point in time, please try some Jamaican patties or whatever it is, hard-dough bread and all of that. So remember to test some of the food that we have. And thank you very much. God bless you all.
Thank you so much, Mr. Brown. All right, moving right along, because I know many candidates have other meetings to go to. Right now, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have, let me just introduce the moderators. I'm going to ask Ms. Janice Hart to just stand where she's and to speak. And we have Christopher Service, Edward McCarthy, and Beverly Coker. And then we also got resource facilitator Nora Brown, and the timekeeper, Ron Scarlett, is here. And of course, you know, we're going to introduce all the candidates after that. So, Ms. Hart.
Let's take it away. Good evening, everyone, and I'm excited to be here. My name is Janice Hart, and I must point out my name is spelled twice on the program differently. H-E-A-R-T, so you can't forget my name is pounding in your chest, and H-A-R-T, that's the way it's spelled. Accompanying me in the moderating this afternoon is Christopher Service, who's sitting right here. Christopher can take a bow. Our man of the hour that we seize his time, Mr. Edwin Carty. We have, along with us, Cynthia Jennings, Beverly Coker. She's not moderating this evening. She decides she wants to register when you get in here. So to my left is Lavon Collins, who will be the next moderator. And what we'll do this afternoon is that we'll have the questions from the audience written, handed to us, and we'll read it to the candidates. And I'll just set two ground rules. One, if you have your cell phone on, could you put it on vibrate? If you get a call, could you step outside? 2 is for my candidates because they're all like Baptist ministers. They preach for a long time. So my candidates, you have 5 minutes to state your platform and 3 minutes or so to respond to a question. It's not a debate or a rebuttal, just a question from some concerned citizen who wants to know what would you do if you had a Klondike bar. So on that note, I will start with Congressman Larson. As I told him many times, I went to the White House, but he wasn't in his office, and I sat in his chair and took pictures that I have. So I hope the next time I visit, he's sitting there so I get a picture with him. The question is, do you want to go up on the stage as a politician, or would you like a cordless mic?
Before we go any further, Ms. Hart and Mr. Larson, why don't we have them introduce themselves first on the row, and then they can start talking.
Sure. Why don't we go down? I'm John Larson, United States Congressman from the 1st Congressional District. Honored to represent you all.
Good afternoon. I'm Susan Peisowitz. I am the former Secretary of the State, and I am the Democratic candidate for Lieutenant Governor running with Ned Lamont.
Thank you for coming. My name is Charles Jackson. I'm from Windsor, and I'm running for the 5th District House of Representatives, and I'm just some dude that decided to get involved.
Thank you for the invitation here. I really appreciate it. My name is Jeff Russell. I am the Green Party candidate for United States Senate, and if you look hard enough, you will find my name on your ballot.
Good afternoon. I'm Ed Vargas. I am proud to represent the city of Hartford in the State House of Representatives. I represent the 6th Assembly District.
Hello, my name is Jennifer Nye. I'm from Manchester, and I'm running for the 1st Congressional District office against Mr. Larson.
Hi, my name is Joe Markley. I'm the state senator for the 16th District, which is Southington, Waterbury, Prospect, Wolcott, and Cheshire. But I'm here as the Republican candidate for Lieutenant Governor running with Bob Stefanowski.
Tom McCormick. I'm running against Mr. Larson. I'm not running against Jennifer because I think she's a wonderful woman. Born and raised in Hartford, and I hope when we're done, you know what I would like to see. Vote for Tom McCormick, Green Party. Thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Brandon McGee, running for re-election here in the 5th Assembly District. Welcome to the great 5th. Number 5, Mr. Larson there. I don't know how to follow up to all of that, so I just figured I'll throw something in. But nonetheless, I'm glad to be here. If you see me go out, I'm going to be speaking to a group of students, about 25 of them, so I don't want to miss out on them, but I'm going to stay as long as I can. But I'm glad to represent you all at the State House. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm the former state representative from Bloomfield and Windsor, David Barham, but I'm here today running for probate judge in the 3rd District, which is Bloomfield, East Granby, Suffield, and Windsor Locks. And I have never missed one of these forums, and even though my position is a little bit different, I wanted to be here and say thank you for all the support that all of you have given me over the years. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Bobby Gibson. I am the current state representative representing the 15th District, which is Windsor and Bloomfield. I have the honor to have taken over after our honored David Barham became probate judge, and I am following in his footsteps. It's good to see many friends and associates here tonight. I'll have to give a special shout out to my Mayor Susan Brown. She should be up here, but she's not. But Suzette, but thank you for having us here today.
Okay, pass it back down to Mr. Larson. I saw Suzette Brown, like he said, Mayor of Bloomfield from where I'm from, and of course I saw Arjo Winch as well. So, Ruth Robinson's here too? Luke? All right. Thank you guys for coming. All right, Senator Larson.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jennifer, and Dermot, thank you as well. What an honor it is to serve the people of the 1st Congressional District, and I'm humbled to be here before you and ask for your vote and support. Let me applaud all the candidates who are here today. And it's an extraordinary thing, as I was talking to Jennifer earlier, when people are able to submit their name and hold themselves out to the public for their approval. That approval has got to be based on solutions and work that you're going to provide the district. I'm honored to have represented this district for 10 terms. My predecessor, Barbara Kennelly, was in Congress for 19 years. In those 19 years, 15 of them, she was in the majority. I've been in Congress for 20 years, only 4 of which we've been in the majority, and we have not been in the majority for the last 8 years. And it's our desire, even though I pride myself on working across the aisle to produce solutions that bring the nation together, it's our desire to have a gavel so that we can change things in a way that's going to make sure that we have immigration laws that make common sense and allow the flow of commerce to go back and forth, and to make sure that, especially in the Caribbean basin, that we're reaching out and making sure that we're developing both economically and also from a humanitarian standpoint. All of this begins and ends, and I'm proud to have done work with the mayor and the Common Council in Hartford and East Hartford to focus on economic development and make sure that we put the country back to work. That begins and starts with infrastructure. You may have heard about my proposal, a long-term vision for this area to reunite North Hartford with the rest of the city, to recapture our riverfront, and to develop the city of Hartford so it's not reliant on $40 million from the state, but has its own ability to develop the city itself, to prosper and grow and create the kind of jobs that we need to put people back to work. I think that that's essential for the flow of commerce, and also to both recapture our river and to reunite our cities and to fix our levee system, which is in catastrophic need of attention. I pledge to you that I will continue to work towards those efforts. We feel confident that we're going to take back the House of Representatives. And when we do, I'll be on the Ways and Means Committee. And the most important thing I'm going to be able to do is have a gavel. And I'll be chairman of the subcommittee on Social Security. Social Security affects everybody in this room. Newsflash to my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. Social Security is not an entitlement. It's the insurance you paid for. All your life you've invested in Social Security, and especially women of color, who for far too many of them find themselves working all their lives, having been home to raise their children, and then have been in the workforce, but while they were in the workforce, were earning 77 cents for every dollar their male counterpart was. More than 50% of all the women who retire with Social Security only. And more than 50% of them retire in poverty. And for women of color, it's 60% of them. That is wrong in the wealthiest nation in the world. So we're out to change that. And as chairman of the committee, I'm going to make sure that A, we increase Social Security across the board by 2%. That no one can retire into poverty, that the new floor for Social Security becomes 150% of poverty, which makes sure that no woman, especially having worked and raised children all their lives, can retire into poverty, to make sure that the cost of living, the COLA that you receive, actually reflects the cost that the elderly experience, and whether it's pharmaceutical costs, whether it's doctor visits, whether it's hospitalization, whether it's physical therapy or heating and cooling your home, this is the kind of COLA that we need to reflect. It's something that the AARP has long proposed. And you shouldn't be taxed in retirement, not on your Social Security. Do you realize today that if you make more than $24,000 and you're single, you're taxed on your Social Security? A married couple makes more than $32,000, you're taxed on your Social Security? We're going to end that. And we completely pay for it as well, so that no future generation will be burdened by debt. We call our plan Social Security 2100 because it's solvent beyond the 75-year requirement. How do we know? Because the Social Security actuaries have said so. The other side says that what we need to do is both cut benefits the older you get and make you wait longer to get Social Security. How does that make any sense? Especially when you know that you've paid for this all your life. And how do you know? Because it says FICA on that pay stub. What does that stand for? Federal Insurance Contribution. Whose? Your contribution that you've made throughout your life. The last time we fixed this program or looked at it was in 1983. Ronald Reagan was president. Tip O'Neill was Speaker of the House. 1983, let me ask you this. Have any of your insurances gone up since 1983? Of course they have. But we haven't adjusted our own Social Security plan at all. But under our leadership, under Democratic leadership, we're going to change that. And we're going to make sure that we adjust it in a manner where we phase it in over 25 years. So that if you're making $50,000 a year, it would cost you 50 cents a week to make sure that Social Security is there for you and future generations with all the enhancements that we have. And I just got a tug from Janice. She says, "You're preaching too long, preacher." But that's what I'm focused on. It's an honor to represent and serve you. And thank you so much for that opportunity.
Oh, I'll yield to the congressman. Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Such a pleasure to be here on behalf of myself and my partner in this venture, Ned Lamont. The economy is the most important issue on the ballot. And I believe that the best way to predict what someone will do for you is to take a look at what they've done. And I'm proud to say that Ned Lamont has started a very successful telecommunications business. And even though he doesn't hold elected office yet, several months ago, he brought Infosys to Hartford, a major technology firm that has already started hiring hundreds of people in the Hartford area and giving them good paying jobs. That's what we need in our state. And I've spent the past 6 years helping more than 80 small companies across Connecticut create thousands of good paying jobs by helping veteran-owned, women-owned, and minority-owned businesses get access to capital. So you can count on Ned Lamont and I to support small businesses because we know that half the people in our state work for businesses with fewer than 100 people. And we know the power of those businesses that are committed to Connecticut because their owners live here to grow our economy. Secondly, we are passionate about investing in our transportation infrastructure. And if you haven't noticed, it's falling apart. Take a look wherever you go across the state. We are number 41 amongst all the states in the country in terms of transportation infrastructure. I hope you check the Lockbox initiative and support that initiative so that we can start investing in rebuilding our aging roads and bridges, the 300 structurally deficient bridges that we have in our state and fixing them. And if we do that, we will create thousands of good paying union construction jobs and our economy will be boosted because every dollar that you invest creates $6 of economic development. You can count on Ned Lamont and I to build a pipeline from school to work so that we can keep our young people here in Connecticut and our employers here too. And by that I mean when a young person graduates from a technical high school, a state college or university or a community college, that they will have a good paying job waiting for them when they finish because Ned and I will work with our best employers in our state to make sure that they have the trained, talented young people that they need so that they don't have to go to Boston or New York to get employees. Key to keeping people in our state is providing health insurance. Mr. Brown mentioned the Affordable Care Act. Well, since Ned and I got endorsed by President Barack Obama, we've started to call it Obamacare, because that has helped 162,000 people in our state get insurance who didn't have it before. Ned and I will stand up for that. The other team has voted against it or said they don't support it. We think key to keeping people in our state is supporting pay equity for women. The congressman touched on it. Ned and I will stand up for paying women dollar for dollar what men make. It will uplift every family in our state. Right now, white women are making 83 cents on the dollar. African American women are making 59 cents, and Latino women are making 48 cents. That is wrong. We won't stand for it, and we will reduce that gender pay gap. We think that family medical leave paid for is important. All the states around us have that. Ned and I will stand up for it. The other side doesn't support it. Here's another thing we think is key to keep good paying jobs in our state, to keep people here, to attract people from outside of our state, is a $15 an hour minimum wage. Ned and I strongly support that. The other side has voted against it, or even more remarkable, wants to abolish it. So these are just a few things that Ned and I feel very strongly and passionately about. Will get our economy going, keep our young people here and their parents, and move our state forward. And we so appreciate the opportunity and your consideration. Thank you so much.
I don't know how to follow them. I got it. Hello, David. Charles Jackson, you were my mayor. We went to high school together. Well, you're a little bit older. Bloomfield has its own song. It's Bloomfield, Connecticut, 06002. It's the stupidest song, but we all learned it. In any case, this is a meet and greet. Charles Jackson. I live at 26 Wilson Avenue, right down the street. I walked here. I don't know how many candidates walked here, but I did. I was born on Mail Avenue in 1971. Nice meeting you too. Nice meeting you. How many of us here were born at Mount Sinai? It's gone. How many of us went to Lincoln Dairy, the ice cream shop? Yeah. It's gone and crumbled too. How many of us went to John C. Clark? I did. I also didn't know that there was actually Clark Street. We always got dropped off on Barber Street. How you doing? Growing up in Bloomfield, I learned through the Boy Scouts, because I'm an Eagle Scout, that on my honor, I'll do my best to do my duty to God and the country, to obey the Scout law at all times, to help people, to keep myself physically straight, mentally awake, and morally straight. I try that every day. Every person I meet, I always extend my hand out before I say my name. I truly believe that if we all work together, not just us, not just us in this room, just talk to your neighbor. Meet the neighbor on one side. Meet the neighbor on the other side. Talk about the guy across the street. Do what you need to do. Communicate. A couple days ago, I had people in my backyard. Brandon mentioned to me earlier. Where'd he go? Brandon mentioned earlier that someone had stolen his lawnmower from his yard. Someone tried to steal my son's bike. I'm a bouncer right now. So guess what? That guy's not feeling too good. Sorry. Oops, sorry. In any case, in my professional career, I've been a photojournalist. I'm twice Emmy nominated. Photographer of the Year, investigative. I'm sorry. I don't mind shaking twice. My job was to basically help people deal with their stuff. You get robbed, you get hurt, you come to me. I help you. Okay? I've been finding bullets on my street. Okay? I clean my street. Reverend, I want to tell you right quick, I love your church. I will not come to your church until after the election. I'm not coming for votes. But the election I'm talking about is for state senate in 2020 when my son is old enough to be state representative. I want to be senator. All right, I'll come. Because I'm Charles Windsor Jackson III. That doesn't mean anything to anybody but myself. My middle name is Windsor for a stupid reason. And I'll tell you what it is if I meet you on the street. I'll be done in just a moment. There's just a lot of people here. Meet your neighbor. Meet your neighbor. Meet your neighbor. Meet your neighbor. Who else here remembers Jim Dandy? Okay, it's now Burgerland, right? It's not the same. Snyder's supermarket. I'm forgetting where I'm going, by the way. I do remember being at Snyder's. I picked up a Pez candy, put it in my pocket, walked on out. Got home, ate that Pez candy. My dad asked me, where did I get it from? I said, I found it. My dad, not just once, and I didn't use the words or the real spin he puts on that. I want to tell you, beat your kids, but that's not the political thing. I'm not going to beat my kids because my kids were raised right. But sometimes when they do something wrong, they need to be punished. Don't be afraid to punish your kids. It doesn't mean that you have to hit them. Now, as Photographer of the Year, one of the things I really, really liked doing was listening to people. Really, really like listening to people. But one of the things I really, really hated as Photographer of the Year in 2000 was when someone kept moving. Hello. Hello. Now I'm going over here. Almost done, made my rounds. I should be at 10,000.
Got a minute to go.
Yep. Like I said, I walked here. My travels originally started because I wanted a speed bump. Then I wanted a fence. Didn't get either one. Kept moving on. Got on the boards of commissions. Became the first black man or person of color to run a Masonic lodge in Windsor. Turns out there were 5 of us that year throughout the state. So I can't say I was the first one in the state. Being worshipful master, being the only person of color, it went as well as you might think. They had me there, and it didn't really go anywhere. But anytime you see me, you will always see me behind the counter of something. You will see me cooking. You will never see me at a chili fest shaking hands, taking pictures, because in news and TV, we call those people posers. They are professionals at smiling and telling you what you want to hear. I want my Grossmans back, okay? Remember Grossman's? It's now
Charles,
a church.
we have to hand the mic over
I'm
now
sorry,
to Jeff
I'm not
Russell
professional.
from the Green.
Oops, here you go. Thank you very much. Thank you, and thank you for letting me shake your hands.
Don't expect me to move around as much as Charles did. My name is Jeff Russell. As I said, you will find my name on the ballot if you look for it. We're down on the 5th line, I think. I got into this because I really thought there was value in having a green voice in the conversation. I'm not so much a politician. I've come to realize I'm more of a philosopher. And the way things are in this country now, I am really appreciative of the invitation here. Because right now, today, this feels like safe space to me. I've seen overt racism in my time. I've seen flagrant racism. I've seen blatant racism. And I'm even getting better at recognizing covert racism. But never in my life can I remember the level of blatant racism, overt racism, coming from high office that I have seen from the administration that is now in Washington, D.C. It took me too long to realize that racism is one of the largest foundation stones the United States is built on. And I'm finally recognizing the cognitive dissonance of an otherwise brilliant man when he said, "We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal," when he owned slaves. And then a couple of dozen lines lower in that same document, he went on to call the people who were being displaced and in some instances slaughtered by force of arms, savage Indians. Well, excuse me, if you came to my home and started to drive me out with force of arms, I think I might get a little savage too. It is long past time that we dug that stone out of the foundation. And I will cooperate with anyone who's willing to team up with me or invite me on their team to help get that accomplished. It never made any sense in the first place. It sure as hell doesn't make sense to have that here as part of this country now. And one of the greatest capacities we as human beings have is our ability to cooperate. When we cooperate, the whole becomes greater than the sum of the parts. I've been saying that for more than a decade. I put it in my science fiction that I write. I put it on my campaign page. When we cooperate, we can accomplish a lot. And my train of thought just got derailed, so that happens to me a lot. On racism, I'm getting really fed up with those forums that ask, "What is your race?" For more than a decade now, I have gone down to the bottom and found the box that says "other." And I check that box, and they want you to specify, which is exactly why I want to be there, because when they ask me my race, I say other, and then I put human. And you know something? That got me disqualified from jury service in the United States federal court system. There is something seriously wrong with that picture. Now, I have a lot of thoughts about economics and a lot of the other things that are going on in this country, but I've said what's important to me, important to my spirit, and once again, thank you for inviting me to this safe space where I felt able to say these things that have been bothering me for a long, long time.
Thank you so much. You're on time. Now we'll have our Representative Ed Vargas. And could you just remind the audience what you're running on so the questions come by and be easy?
Yes, my name is Ed Vargas, and I'm running for re-election for a fourth term to the State House of Representatives, representing the great city of Hartford. And I've been involved now for a long, long time in the Hartford community. As a matter of fact, I used to spend a lot of time up here in North Hartford with my political ally, the late Senator Wilbur Smith. And we used to give a lot of grief to the Democratic machine back then because we didn't feel the Democratic machine at that time really represented us. So we were always the radicals in the party. But now the party has changed and embraced us. And I've seen a big difference in the Democratic Party. It's become more militant. And I'm expecting that blue wave because I want to see our Congressman, John Larson, have one of those big gavels on one of those committees because Connecticut needs all the help it can get from the federal government. And I've been involved, like I said, for a long time. I was a teacher 35 years. My wife, Sylvia, was sitting back there, was a teacher 35 years in the Hartford Public Schools. We had an opportunity to, I was elected by the teachers as one of their leaders for many, many years. And so I've been an advocate for education. I consider myself more an activist than a politician. I've been a community activist, a political activist. I served as chair of the Democratic Town Committee when Carrie Perry was mayor of the city. I also had the opportunity to serve the city of Hartford as one of the commissioners of planning and zoning, thanks to former mayor Eddie Perez, who appointed me to that position, who's here with us today. Thank you, Eddie. And I feel like this is a homecoming because I'm a member of the West Indian Social Club. I come from one of the West Indian Islands, one of the Greater Antilles like Jamaica, the island of Puerto Rico. And as a Caribbean American, I feel right at home with this audience, which I happen to know almost everybody in this room. Practically everybody. I look around at somebody I've known for years. But I have to especially mention my good friend Dermot Brown and his wife Nora, who he calls Margaret, who were the first to invite me over to the West Indian Social Club. We're talking about 30 or 40 years ago. So, but I know almost everybody in this room, and I know all the work all of you have done. I know you're well informed on the issues. The only thing I can say is, you know, I've been there through 3 terms. This last time was a very tough time, especially for the city of Hartford, because it was near bankruptcy. So I was very proud to be part of the Hartford delegation, the 6 state reps, which were up there fighting for us, which include also Brandon McGee, who had to leave to talk to those 25 students, but our two senators too, Fonfara and McCrory. And we were happy, not only because we had extra, you know, all those tens of millions of dollars to save the city from bankruptcy, but we were also able to convince our colleagues that they pick up our debt service too, and that's huge. That was huge for our city. And I also have to say that also a thank you has to go out to our mayor, Luke Bronin, because he did go out to all those suburban areas and try to explain the situation Hartford was in, which was basically created by the unfair policies of the state of Connecticut. That was something we had to try to educate. Even in the Democratic caucus, we had to educate our colleagues that largely Hartford finances were the way they were, not because Hartford is mismanaged, but because Hartford is structurally unable to raise the money it needs, the revenues it needs, because of the state's own policies of allowing people not to pay taxes. We have so much property that's tax exempt by state law, and we're supposed to be compensated through a program called the pilot program, payment in lieu of taxes, but it's only been funded like at 45 cents on the dollar, which means that every time a property goes off the tax rolls, we lose 55 cents on the dollar, and it just doesn't work. But, you know, I think our colleagues finally understood and we were able to get the support we needed. There's still a lot of things I'd like to do in my 4th term. One of them is I'd like to see paid family leave. Right now, people have emergencies in their family. I know because I had to bring my parents up a few years ago from Florida. My father suffers now from Parkinson's disease. My mother has Alzheimer's. And we have emergencies in our family, sometimes with our kids, with our parents, with loved ones. Our own situations sometimes require that we take a couple of weeks off from work. And I'd like to see paid family leave. That's one of the issues I want to work on. I also worked hard on trying to raise the minimum wage, and we came within 1 vote of getting to $15 an hour. I'd like to go back and work on that too. And I see my good friend AJ here who has worked on that issue with me too, on the fast food workers. AJ, let's give him a hand too. And so I'm hoping that with your support, I'll be able to serve another term there. And, you know, I feel very proud to be able to say that I represent the capital city in our state government. Thank you.
Hi, for all of those who don't know me, which is really all of you, my name is Jennifer Nye, and I'm from Manchester. My mom was born and raised on Worcester Street, right down the road from here. I've been a community activist in Manchester for many years. I was first elected to a board of a small taxing district in the north end of town that included fire service. That whole Buckland Hills Mall area is all volunteers. So I decided, after I became the fire commissioner, to become an EMT and volunteer firefighter there, which I served and saw things that nobody should ever see. So I decided, leave that to the professionals. I had done my time and I felt very good about what I had done for my community. So I've been basically active in my town. I was on the town board of directors. And when I went to the Republican convention this year down at Foxwoods, I went as a delegate. I wasn't going as a candidate, never thought I'd be a candidate. But when I learned that the Republicans had no one to run against John Larson this year, I said, that's un-American. You need to give people a choice. Someone has to run against him. Fine, I'll do it. So here I am. I'm running against John Larson in one of the hardest races in the state. But I'm willing to do that because I'm concerned about our community. I'm a paralegal. I work 9 to 5 every day over on Gillette Street by St. Francis. And I've been in Hartford working for over 30 years. I enjoy it. I love it. But things need to change. John Larson was talking about his tunnel plan. Well, the tunnel plan is not going to work for the city of Hartford. John thinks that digging a tunnel from New Park Ave across the southern part of Hartford under the Connecticut River, ending at Rensselaer Field, is a good idea. The DOT put together a public advisory commission. That public advisory commission is made up of groups like this who sit at a big table looking at the options available to them. This group discounted this tunnel plan 2 years ago. They've been together for 5 years studying these plans, and they felt that right now the number one choice for options is up in the meadows where no homes would have to be taken. The rail lines don't have to be moved, and it would be a much better plan. But John started this plan 2 years ago when he ran in 2016 and just hasn't let it go. The DOT doesn't want it. The community in Hartford doesn't want it because of all the takings. As other issues, I am all for technical education. We need to start more in this community. Pratt and Whitney, people are dying for jobs. They can't find enough candidates. We need to support technical education in our communities, and we need to get people working. And I think we'll be able to do that. What are some of the other things? Social Security is a huge issue. It's not a Democratic issue. It's not a Republican issue. It's our issue. There's no reason that parties can't get together and talk across the aisle to come up with answers. And I believe the incivility that we're faced now in Washington and elsewhere has gotten out of control. We can do things in a civil manner and be able to work together to make change. Washington is broken, our system is broken, but with common sense, I think we could fix that. I have some ideas. I was sharing one of them earlier, and I'd like to be able to share more of those ideas. So if you want to talk afterwards, I'd love to talk with you and share some of the ideas that I have. I'm open to questions and your concerns especially. I want to hear about your concerns and what we could do together to fix some of the problems that we have. So I'm not a Washington insider. I am not a career politician. I'm just Jennifer Nye. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thanks. I'm Joe Markley, just to remind you, a state senator and the Republican candidate for lieutenant governor with Bob Stefanowski at the top of the ticket. And Jennifer and I are the only two Republicans here. In fact, I often feel like I find myself, oh, you too. Okay, sorry, Charles, didn't realize that. I often find myself on this campaign, I think, either going to rooms where they're mostly Republicans or they're mostly not Republicans, the people in between Bob goes to. But in either case, I like the chance to talk about what I believe in. And people that know me in the legislature, Edwin and Brandon, if he were around here, and the others, I think would say two things about me. One is I'm pretty conservative, and the other is I'm basically a decent guy to deal with. And the reason that is, it's not necessarily because I'm a nice guy, but I will say this. I believe that all of us that are in this business want the same thing, which is what's best for the people of Connecticut. And the disagreement we have politically is how you get to that result. What policies will bring us what we need as a state? And I guess I'd say I'm a conservative Republican and kind of a small government Republican, because I believe that the cost of government has become a burden on people, that the size of it is greater than we can support and more than it does really good for us, and that in many ways it's intrusive into our lives, that government should not be so important to us, that we tend to look at the world as a top-down thing when really it's a bottom-up thing. What matters is what we are ourselves, in our hearts, in our characters, and in our souls, our relationship with our family, with our neighbors, and the communities that we live in, which is to say faith communities, the business community, the things that are personal to us, not the things that are set up by government. And I think that when we talk about all the topics that were mentioned at the beginning as possible potential questions in terms of healthcare and public safety and housing and so forth, that behind all of them, the solution, the only solution to all of them, is economic vitality. The problem we have in Connecticut is this state, which was a great booming state when I was a young man. Many of you are my age, but some of you will have to take my word for it. This was a place that people came to for opportunity. And over the last several decades, I'd say, we have seen a consistent decline. And I think the reason for the decline is the cost of government itself and bad public policy, which has discouraged entrepreneurs. Once upon a time, people came from all over to start businesses here because of the educated workforce we had, the good transportation system, the low taxes, the lack of an income tax. We've reversed those things. We've let the transportation system go, and we've let taxes get higher and higher until we're the most taxed state in the nation. We've got to start to reverse that, in my opinion, in order to bring business back, in order to revitalize business, so that we can have jobs, so we can afford health insurance, so we can afford the good schools that we've had to struggle to hold on to, so that people have jobs that promote stable communities, families that can stay put, and the public safety and the good health, I think, that follows from all of those things. That's why I'm running for lieutenant governor. I'm with Bob Stefanowski, whose platform is to reduce taxes. You'll hear people say, how can you get rid of the income tax? It's half the revenue. You do this like you do anything, a little bit at a time. In Spanish, had the chance recently to use my old Spanish on the Spanish radio stations, but in Spanish you say, poco a poco se va lejos. Little by little you go a long ways. And that's what I think we need to do to turn our direction around in this state and to try to restore what was once here, a climate that made business growth, economic growth possible, and that would restore the cities. Absent job growth, absent employment in the cities, I don't think there's any way to make the cities work. Bring the jobs here and the rest of the things will follow. That will be my goal if I have the honor to be lieutenant governor. It will also be my goal to try to reach out to every community I can in the city of Hartford. And I will say, to work with Democrats, as I've been able to do on the Human Services Committee, for things that we know we've got to do to make sure we do them the best way possible. So again, thank you for your time, and I'd appreciate your consideration.
Thank you so much. We're going to break the chain of operation, and we're going to have Representative Tony Tong speak at this time. Thank you guys for allowing him.
Thank you. Hi, everybody.
The game rules are you have 4.5 minutes.
Okay. I'm William Tong. I'm very proud to be the Democratic and Working Families Party nominee for Attorney General. And I'm a member of the legislature right now. I'm the House Chairman of the Judiciary Committee. And I think I speak for all of us when I say it's been a tough few weeks here for us in this country, and it's been a really difficult couple of years. One of the bright spots over the last few weeks was seeing Barack Obama re-emerge and stand on stage behind a podium and lead this country again. My first reaction was, it's about freaking time. We miss him. We miss him. And it reminded me that for 8 years, I was extremely proud that my 3 children, 12, 10, and 7, would only grow up in a world in which America had elected a black president. And it reminded me that I grew up in a state, in a city of Hartford, where I believed, as Sean believed growing up here, that anything was possible. I represent Stamford now, but I'm a son of this city. Born in Hartford Hospital, my parents and my grandparents came here as immigrants with nothing. My father came here with 57 cents in his pocket. He went to cook Chinese food at the Hong Kong Kitchen on Blue Hills Avenue in Bloomfield. My mom spent her first night in 600 Asylum, that brick building that still stands there overlooking 84 and the interchange. She went to Hartford Public High. She met my dad. They got married. They opened a Chinese restaurant on Park Street called the Town Sun Kitchen near Seatown Supermarket. Does anybody remember the Town Sun? It was there for decades. And it gave my parents, this city gave my parents an opportunity to work hard. They worked 7 days a week, 15 hours a day, so that I would have the opportunity to stand here and in a couple weeks potentially be the first Asian American constitutional officer in the history of our state. And I know that's okay with people in this room because there's a lot of Chinese folks in Jamaica. But now, fast forward to where we are now. We have a president and administration in Washington that's coming after immigrants across Connecticut and across our country. And the president of the United States has formed a task force to denaturalize immigrant American citizens, like many people in this room, like my parents and my grandparents. And that's why I'm running for Attorney General. Because like a lot of people in this room, I know what it is to suffer hate and bigotry and to have people come after your family. And I think I have a unique voice and a special right to say to the President of the United States, if you think you're going to ride a wave of hate and bigotry and remake our world, you are going to have to come through me and all of us, and we are not afraid of you. And I just want to say, together, we've taken on forces much more powerful than Donald Trump, and we've beaten them. My colleagues here today, Dave Barham, Bobby Gibson, my colleagues from Hartford, we've taken on the NRA. We've written the strongest gun laws in the nation. We took on the big banks at the height of the foreclosure crisis, helped thousands of Connecticut families, including Hartford and Bloomfield families, stay in their homes. There was a spike in hate crimes after the president was elected. We wrote the strongest hate crimes laws in the nation and have stood up for the civil rights of everyone here in this state and across the country. And now I need to take that fight to a larger forum. Because right now there are 18 Republican attorneys general in Texas trying to get a federal judge to declare the Affordable Care Act unconstitutional. And so I'm going to work really hard over the next couple of weeks, the next 15 days, so that on January 9th, I can get on a plane to Texas and get in that fight and defend health insurance for all the people in this room and across this city. I should say Ed Vargas was right behind me, so I didn't see him. My very good friend Ed Vargas, who also worked with me on all of those important initiatives. Let me just close up by saying my opponent has a very different worldview. When she was asked whether she supports the president's policy of separating children from their families at the border, she said, "Yes, I do." You don't need any more reason than that to get out there and vote in 2 weeks. That is not who we are. That is not the world that I want my 3 kids to grow up in. And that is why we fight. Thank you.
Hi, good day, folks. My name's Tom McCormick, and I have a website, tomforcongress.org. I appreciate you all take a look. And I have some cards. I gave many of you cards. If you don't have one, I'll make sure before you walk out the door you get one because it has some about my platform. I got a cheat sheet here. There's lots of things to talk about, and I would probably forget one of them. Let's start at the bottom. Violence against women is a national security issue. That women are raped in this country is totally unacceptable to me. And if we need to make rape a federal crime with maximum sentences, with no plea bargaining, or even a registry of people's DNA so these guys can't get away with it, that's what we got to do. It's got to stop. And if the boys can't take care of keeping their toys in their pants, well, the Taliban has an answer for that. I wouldn't go that far, but failing education is a national security issue. This country is falling behind Western Europe, Korea, Japan in our educational achievement. And you want to know why? Because the capitalist class, the corporate rulers, they send their kids to private schools. The wealthy send their kids to private schools, and they don't simply care about your kids. I read the book about Milner School. Maybe some of you read it. The children in the room, was it 4E? And it's a matter of money doesn't buy everything, but money can buy first-class classrooms with scientific equipment and not film strips that are outdated by 50 years. Discrimination is a national security issue. Jeff, I think, spoke very well, and I won't say much on that. But last time I was in a doctor's office, there was that form. I crossed off all that stuff, and I put Vorlon, Ferengi, hybrid. Those are people from Star Trek, races. There's no such thing as race. We are one people, and that's it. And these boxes for race, I want to see them gone from every single federal form there is, because we're like, how can you say it? We're one people. Bob Marley, right? One people, one love. Amen, right? Dirty soil is a national security issue. Right now, our soils are loaded with pesticides and herbicides and fungicides, and I want to tell you, you cannot grow nutritious, healthy food in those soils. And they are causing cancer. You wonder why we have cancer? Well, a lot of it, glyphosate, which is in our food. Climate change is a national security issue. That's really a big one. Even the Pentagon recognizes that one. Well, so that means we got to go to renewable energy, and quickly. That means solar thermal, it means offshore wind, and it means solar panels on the roofs of our building. You want to know what it costs? About 6 cents a kilowatt hour to put a solar panel on your roof. I don't think you can buy power from Eversource for 6 cents. I know you can't. John Larson's, when it comes to climate change, I looked on his website. All I saw was natural gas, and I wonder why that was. Well, he had T-Bone Pickens. He's a billionaire, Texas oilman, who, by the way, just had a big confab down at his house. He had all the billionaire class in to give donations to the Republicans. Guess what? This guy over here, he took a check from T-Bone Pickens to promote gas. That's a Democrat? Wealthy donor to the Republican Party? And he's taking a check from him? Oh, he's gone. I don't know. Dirty air, national security issue. How many kids in Hartford have asthma? I think it's quite a few. How many elderly people have respiratory disease? I think it's quite a few. And a lot of it is from the nuclear plants and it's from the coal plants. And both of them got to be shut down. Nuclear plants, you don't think of them being dirty because you don't see the big black smoke coming out. But ionizing radiation comes out. And guess where the highest rates of cancer are in the state of Connecticut? New London County, downwind of Millstone. Asthma for the kids, too. Boy, I'm glad I have this. Dirty water, national security issue. See, everyone has to go out and buy bottled water these days. Why is that? They don't trust the water being clean, and they're probably pretty right. MDC water here in Hartford's pretty good, actually. But you go to Iowa, for instance, where there's all those herbicides and pesticides in the ground. Over half of Iowa's water is undrinkable.
We don't want to cut you off. I need you to wrap up in 30 seconds.
And that's spreading. It's spreading. And I want to say this to end. John Larson says he'll be chair and he'll get all these things. Well, no, he won't, because we'll still have a Republican Trump and we'll still have a Republican Senate. So I can't say I'll get you anything, but I want to tell you damn sure I will point this nation in a matter where people's health matter, and not the Pentagon, and not the corporations, and not the 1%ers. Thank you.
Thank you. We now have the candidate Barone for probate judge.
Good afternoon to everybody. My name is David Barham, and I'm running for the probate judge for the 3rd District, which is Bloomfield, East Granby, Suffield, and Windsor Locks. And as I said in my prefatory comments before, even though I'm running for probate judge, I'm here as a candidate because I have never missed one of your forums, and I want to compliment the social club because our greatest threat to democracy is apathy. And you work so hard to make sure that the community understands the issues, has a chance to meet all the candidates regardless of party or philosophy. And that's part and an essential part of our democracy. It also, quite honestly, gives me an opportunity to see some of my colleagues that I served almost 10 years with. And William Tong I haven't seen in the last couple of months, but it's so great to see him and Ed and Brandon before him. And it's a real heartwarming thing to see Bobby Gibson, who was my successor in the legislature when I had to leave to serve as probate judge, follow me, and I follow and stay in touch with him closely. But let me take a few moments and just share with you a few things about the probate court and take your minds off of some of these bigger global policies. The probate court has 20 areas of jurisdiction, and I should say that 2 people from Hartford who are the experts in probate are your former Judge Bob Killian and your current Judge Foy Smith. Outstanding judges who really understand the law. But within those 20 areas of jurisdiction, you would think that decedent's estates is the major part, but it's only about 40% of what we do. And let me just tell you a little bit about some of the other areas. One is helping people with intellectual disabilities. And I can't tell you how many cases I have had come before me in the last year with children who have intellectual disabilities, who need the services of the state, who need people to become their legal guardians and help them make the decisions that they are not able to make themselves. And it's important that the state have funding to continue the kinds of services and programs that these vulnerable individuals are subject to day in and day out. Now, some of them are higher functioning than others, but I can tell you I have seen cases that just make you want to cry. It's almost incomprehensible to understand that their families, their parents have given up their livelihoods to spend their time with their children in home so that they can get the essential services to just survive. And the state of Connecticut needs to continue to fund these services. Conservatorships. When we look at our elderly population, so many of our citizens who are aging are facing difficulties, whether it's dementia, forgetfulness, physical disabilities, where they need somebody to assist them not only with their personal needs, but their financial needs. And again, conservatorships involve people who volunteer. Some of them are paid, some of them are family members, and it's really essential that our society continue to recognize those of us who are the most vulnerable, who need to continue to have the services so that they can survive. Now, I know that many of our candidates spoke about immigration, but believe it or not, the probate courts also have a role in immigration, because when somebody comes into our country and they don't have a parent who's here to care for them, or there is a relative willing to step up, The probate court has a special procedure under federal law which allows us to appoint a guardian to care for that child, and they become dependent upon the probate court and that guardian for their services. And many of these individuals come to our country who want to be outstanding Americans, but they have challenges, financial challenges, language challenges, employment challenges. So while they are acclimating themselves to our society, having a guardian to assist them and help them in life is essential. And there are many other areas that the probate court is involved in. So I would say to all of you that when you elect your candidates, be sure to ask them whether they support the kinds of services that allow the people who are most vulnerable, in most need, and many of them come to the probate court for help and assistance. We need to make sure that we fund those services adequately. And once again, from the bottom of my heart, whether I was before you as a former mayor of Bloomfield or state representative from Bloomfield and Windsor, you've always been very supportive of my endeavors, and I want to thank all of you for your past support, but most importantly, don't give up your commitment and enthusiasm to our community, and spread the word to make sure that people are informed when they vote, and most importantly, that they do vote. Thank you.
We'll have Representative Bob Gibson, and after he's done, our last candidate for introduction would be shown. They will have an intermission after that, a brief intermission. We'll ask you to have your questions ready just to come back, because I'm sure a lot of these candidates would like to probably leave a little early. They don't want to preach a long message this afternoon. So have your questions that you have for a specific candidate, and then we'll have the two moderators here. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, again. And Your Honor, David, thank you for the kind words. And it's really good to see my Democratic colleagues up here and to hear from them. And as I'm preparing to speak to you, be very honest with you, I'm going to deviate from what I was going to say, because I'm getting upset. And I'm sitting here on the end of the aisle here, and I'm fuming. Because, folks, we're in some very serious times. And I'm not sure if, I'll be very honest with you, because I owe nothing to no one except for everyone in this room, my constituents in Bloomfield and Windsor, and my daughter, who's a 15-year-old sophomore at Bloomfield High. That's all I owe anything to. And I'm listening to talk today, and do people really understand what it is that we have to go up against, what we have to do in 2 weeks, and what we're going to have to do in 2020? Do people really understand what's affecting us? I am we all together. I am from this area. I've taught in Hartford. I taught in Bloomfield. I've taught in Craig. I'm an educator, longtime football coach, coached many sports. And so we are one. And I'm not hearing anything about the changes that need to take place in order for us to have a better life here in this area. And I'm going to say this. I'm from here, and if it's going to happen, my challenge is it's going to have to happen from us. Bloomfield, Windsor, and Hartford, this area. Why not? Why can't this be the area that changes things for the state? Why can't our changes that we do for ourselves here in the state, why can't that have a significant change that goes on to our nation? We have someone who's supposed to be our leader, who's supposed to be representing us and supposed to be having our kids look up to, that's saying things against women, who's racist, if you ask me, who's talking about against people with disabilities, but he's our leader. We have someone who's just elected to the Superior Court, Kavanaugh, who I have no doubt that he did all those things that were said, but he still got confirmed. It was still okay. I went to school at Southern Connecticut, right down the street from Yale. I know how he was in college, and I know he did those things because I've seen those things. Wow. And you know what's happening? Now what's happening is we have these, I call Trump Republicans, young Trump Republicans coming up. I'm kidding. And what they're doing is they're thinking that it's okay. They're going to come out the woodwork. They're going to come out the woodwork, and we're going to see more and more of this deviant behavior in proposed leadership. But it's going to call for people like us, Bloomfield, Windsor, and Hartford, to stop this stuff. So we have to attack it from the top. All right? We have to challenge it and we have to attack it. But we have to be smart and we have to attack it from underneath. We have to put more into education. We have to put more into our kids. We have to put more into programs and projects where we develop leaders, young leaders who are going to come up. And we have to educate them on how to take charge, how to be empowered, and how to stand up for the things that's right for us. Because if we don't, the same thing is just going to continue happening over and over and over and over again. So yeah, there are some issues that we need to talk about. Yeah, we need fair wages. We need to raise the minimum wage. We need to make sure that people are taken care of. But we, as a people, we got to get energized and we have to get excited about what's going to happen on November 6th. We got to make sure that everyone comes out and votes and vote blue and stand up for the rights of what is important to us. And then what we have to do is we can't just sit back on our hands. We have to now, again, educate ourselves and educate each other. And we have to get that dude out the White House, and we have to put someone in that White House that's going to stand up for us. That's what we have to do. Because if we don't wake up and if we don't empower ourselves, the same thing is going to happen over and over and over and over again. The power is within us. We can do it. The people in this room, we're here, and I've been in this room many a times ever since I was a kid, but it's cold in here, right? But we're in here and it's cold and it's long because it's important to us. The change can happen here. We have to be the change that we want to see. It has to happen here. It has to start right here. Yes, the issues, again, are important, but we have to empower ourselves and think about it. We have to empower our kids. They need to know how important it is to vote, and they need to know the world that they're going into. As I wrap up, again, my daughter, 15-year-old sophomore at Bloomfield High, she has to know what she's going into, and I have to stand up for her. I have to be the champion for her because I want a better world for her. No more of this, I don't know what I'm going to say. I don't know what I'm going to talk about. Are you serious? Again, I'm sitting over here being mad because this is serious business. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're going to let Sean get that mic.
And again, Sean Wood in here, make sure we put this man in office because he's part of that change I'm talking about.
All right. So before Sean starts speaking, Sean, you got 4 minutes. You're late.
4.5 or 4?
4.25.
Okay.
And I was just winked off that people are a little restless. So we're going to ask a few questions, before intermission. And if you don't really need to stretch your legs and you know you're going to have to leave, and you have a question you need to ask, get that done, grab something and, sit back in your chair. We just kind of want to flow through so this goes smoothly and be over. Okay?
Okay, with that, I will try to be quick. First, let me say thank you to the West Indian Social Club and the West Indian community. Every time I've stood before you, every time I've served, you've been there supporting me. And so I'd be remiss if I didn't start my remarks with just a big thank you to you. And so I am the Democratic nominee for state treasurer. And as probably all of you know, I'm the former city council president here in Hartford. But I'm going to quickly tell you something that most of you probably don't know is that I've spent, because you'll hear a lot to the extent you'll hear from my opponent at all. And I don't know if he was here earlier, but I know he's declined to come to another Hartford event. But to the extent you hear from him at all, he'll talk about experience. I spent 20 plus years representing public pension funds as an investment lawyer, and at least 15 years representing the state of Connecticut Treasurer's Office doing investment transactions. I've worked for the AFL-CIO's Office of Investment in Washington, D.C., where I traveled the country, spent time in South Africa, working with the investment community and the unions on investment transactions, and I've served in state and local government. And so that's just the experience piece. I've got it, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but I want to talk about values and vision. And I've served in state and local government, Department of Social Services years ago, and I've served as a city council president here in Hartford. And having no experience in government, right? We hear a lot about this. Going to government from the private sector. I've been in the private sector 20 years. I know it. I respect it. I understand the value it brings. Government is not the private sector. Its mission is different, and the way that you're effective within it is different. And if we need an example of that, we need to look no further than the President of the United States right now. Exhibit A is no experience in claiming to bring business to government. The important challenges facing our state right now for the state treasurer, right? One is our significant unfunded pension liabilities, right? This is, I care deeply about workers, working families, retirees. I spent an adult life focused on these issues, but I tell people the significance of this is not just for workers, state workers, and retirees. It's for every taxpayer in the state. You got to care about this issue. The state teachers' pension fund is only 56% funded. State employees generally is only 38% funded. And I come from, and I should have said this, but I know everybody in the room knows this. This is my city. This is my neighborhood. I'm from the north end of Hartford, the youngest of 6 kids of Eddie and Fern Wooden, and now a father of 2 of my own. But everyone around the state, they like to beat up on Hartford. Yeah, I tell people, yeah, Hartford is a poor city. Yeah, Hartford is struggling. And then their faces drop when I give this fact right here. In a poor and struggling city, right, because everybody talks about pension systems and the funding level, I'm the only one, and this was the case in the Democratic primary, this is the case now with my Republican opponent, I'm the only one that can stand up and say, when faced with the challenge of funding a pension system, with no money, when nobody's paying attention and nobody's looking, I'm the only one that said, and challenged the mayor of my own party, former Mayor Segar, nice guy, but who attempted to underfund the pension system 3 out of 4 years. And I said, no, we can't do that. He said, but that's where the money is. I said, but that's not fiscally prudent and that's not sustainable. I had to convince my colleagues on the city council who said, Sean, you're making it harder for us to put together a budget. I said, but it's the right thing to do. So listen to these numbers. State teachers, 56% funded. State employees, 38% funded. City of Hartford, poor, broke, struggling, laughingstock among many quarters, 74% funded. That's real experience. That's real commitment. And that's someone who can go to the state on day one and hit the ground running. The other thing I like to talk about, because I've had to do it, is even when you're in tough financial times, you still have to invest in the right priorities. You still have to make investments. And I'm focused on investments that will create jobs in our state and investing in Connecticut. I'm focused on investing in our educational system. I'm focused on our crumbling infrastructure around the state. And there are a host of other issues. But in closing, you'll say, I am this community. And I'm the only one that's running for statewide office that can actually say that. I'm the only one that understands the problems of this community and communities like this, and the only one that has a track record of fighting for this community. And I mean this, I say Hartford, I mean the West Indian community, I mean Bloomfield, Windsor. I'm the only one. And so if you want to know what you're getting, just look at the last 25 years of my life and what I fought for, what I've stood for, and my record of public service. And that's the type of state treasurer I'm going to be. And so I'll close again by saying thank you, and it's great to be here. Thank you.
All right, we don't know if you might keep that microphone. We're just going to ask you a few questions, and my next moderator here up with me is Cynthia. Right. You want to mingle? When we ask a question, you guys will mingle.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm Cynthia Jennings. We're going to keep this short.
Okay. The first question that we have from the audience is, why should the Black community vote Democrat or Republican? What will this do for our community? And please, I need at least two people to answer that question quickly. Oh, you have a mic.
See, I have a mic, so I have an advantage. But here, you'll get in there. No, let me say this. That's fine. I'll take 60 seconds. I stand here proudly as a Democrat, and there has not been a year that I have run for office or that I have voted that I felt that it was more significant, and the differences between the Democrats and the Republicans couldn't be starker, right? In terms of what Governor Stefanowski, and with all due respect to the Lieutenant Governor candidate, he's gone, I guess. It's devastating to places like Hartford in terms of what they're proposing to do with the budget, right? Absolutely devastating. And so it's never been more important. The Democrats, they want to support education. They want to support job growth and creation. This is an important year, and it does matter who you vote for. Thank you.
I apologize that I'm the second Democrat to speak, but, I was listening to Representative Bobby Gibson and to the passion which he was speaking about these elections that are coming up. And I said he ate his Wheaties, the breakfast of champions, this morning, because, I'm so upset too. I didn't want to focus so much on what's going on nationally because I'm running for state representative and state government. But what he touched on something that is so important because, we went through this whole Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico and in the Virgin Islands. And it was so difficult to get help to those people because we had a federal government that was obstructing us instead of helping us. And some people said to me, well, Ed, there's a difference because Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands are not really states. They're more like territories, so you can't expect the same level of response. But I don't think that's true. Because the last time I checked the map, Louisiana is one of the 50 states. And when Katrina hit New Orleans, we had the same negative response. And there's still people that were never able to return to their homes in the 9th Ward. And I was there a couple of weeks after the devastation with Sylvia. So take a look at what had happened there. So it's not a question of whether it's a state or a territory. It's a question of who lives there. So November 6th, make sure that every one of your relatives, friends, neighbors, fellow church members, union members, all of them get out to vote. Colleagues, fellow shopkeepers, that we all turn out to vote because we do need that blue wave. We need to send a message to Washington, D.C. that Connecticut is a Democratic state. Thank you.
Thank you, and I think Jeff is going to speak next.
Gee, why should you vote Republican or Democrat? I don't think you should. Especially on the national level. At the very top, both the Republicans and the Democrats and their leadership are bought and paid for by the corporations. They will say things, they can speak fluent progressive or say anything that their audience wants to hear, but when it comes to crunch time, both the Republicans and the Democrats, especially at the top, will do what's good for the corporate sponsors. Now, that's not true of some of the folks I know here on the local level because, that corporate money doesn't filter down that far in a lot of instances. But if we don't start to do something to choke off the interests of the corporations and the extremely wealthy, we are going to lose our democracy. So there's a reason to vote for someone who's not a Republican or a Democrat. Oh, we got a Republican here.
Hold on a second before you all right? Okay. Voting Democrat or Republican, I don't care, just vote. Vote for me because out of all the people that have been here, have been speaking. This damn pen cap has been sitting here and bugging the heck out of me. And I just wanted to pick it up because I'm also not only the only candidate that walked here, I'm the only candidate that brought a pen and paper to take down your concerns. I'm also the only other candidate that brought gloves because on my way here, I picked up 75 cents worth of cans and bottles and then handed it off to someone that was collecting them too. I help people every day.
My response to which way you vote, whether Democrat or Republican, I find that the biggest difference is the far left is trying to bring socialism. Republicans tend to stand for core values, values of our families, values of business. Growing business creates jobs. And what we can do for business is help them expand and create additional jobs. I just think that coming back to core values for everyone is, for me, the way to go.
On my green cheat sheet, it says true national security is found in the health, education, and welfare of our people, not our weapons. And I want to tell you, both Democrats and Republicans in the Senate and the House have voted for $5 trillion for wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. $5 trillion is the amount of money I have no understanding of what that means. I guess it's a stack of 20 from here to the moon. But that's what John Larson has voted for. That's what the Republicans are going to vote for. And it's simple. $715 billion is what John voted for. And every Democrat on the state level, the senators and Congress people, the Democrats, $715 billion for the Pentagon, tens of billions for nuclear weapons. And I should start a new movement called Not Me, because folks, not me. No more money for war.
The gentleman who was just here, who's running for lieutenant government on the Republican side, made a comment about the elimination of the state income tax. Now, I don't want to pay the state income tax. No one wants to get taxed. No one. It's a necessary evil. But if Mr. Stefanowski is successful and he wants to eliminate the state income tax, how at this point in time, he has not given us a plan on how he's going to put those monies back. Right? And so in the absence of a plan, what is he going to do? He's going to eliminate state income tax. What's going to happen? He's going to tax us some other way. Gas tax, car tax. The money has to be replaced. Now, the gentleman here, and I wish he was still here so he can answer this question. All right? He said, well, it's going to be a gradual thing, whereas we're going to do it over time. They're going to replace the taxes over time. And what is that called? It's called torture. Little by little, they're going to take the state income tax back and tax some other type of way. That's what's going to happen. All right? And so, only thing I have to say is this. We are the party that stands for the people. All right? Mr. Lamont and Ms. Beisowitz are the ones that we have to support, because if we don't support them, things aren't going to get any better.
Thank you very much. All right, so I see there was a lot of interest in that question. The next question is, as you know, 72% of the prisoners in Connecticut are Black and Latino, twice as many African Americans and Black Americans and Black citizens and non-citizens are also in Connecticut prisons. The question here is, what are your plans to enhance the Second Chance program, and how do you plan to broaden this program?
First thing, end the war on drugs. Because the war on drugs is all it's doing is putting people in prison. When the marijuana laws were first formed in this country, they were aimed at Black and brown folks. And I say any law that's based in racism is a law that should be voided and is illegitimate. Period. And that's one way to keep people out of jail. Do I want people smoking a lot of weed? No. But, you don't send people to jail for it. Just right off. And I want to say this. We need harsher sentences to keep people to deter crime, but we need them to be shorter. And then we need rehabilitation, which is the second chance. When somebody's life has gone off the wheels and they've messed up, thinking just throwing them in jail for a long time, thinking they're going to be okay when they come out, is just not true. So we got to turn people, when they come out, they got to go into halfway houses. And I say this, we got to just simply turn them over to the social workers and the people that train for jobs.
Over here. Oh.
Yeah, I'd like to see the school to prison pipeline shut down. And if there isn't another example of institutional racism as the statistic we were just quoted, I don't know what it is. Tom's absolutely right. A lot of this is the war on drugs. Well, a lot of the marijuana laws were written to give the people who no longer had a job because prohibition ended a job. Not because marijuana was dangerous, not because it was destroying society, but, because they wanted to keep their buddies in the federal payroll. We know from John Ehrlichman's words that the war on drugs was aimed specifically at groups that Nixon considered enemies. So they came up with these harsh penalties and heavy criminalization so that they could spy on and disrupt groups that they were convinced would never support anything from them. The hippies and people of color. Again, it's as Tom said, it's as racist as it gets. And if we're seeing a move towards legalization of marijuana, if that does not include freeing the people who are in prison now for marijuana violations, that's pure racism. And if it doesn't include putting the people who have been in this business of cannabis products for 20 and 30 years into the now legal business instead of handing it off to some rich white tobacco company, that's institutional racism too. And, let's get these guys and gals who are, dealing marijuana out of prison because they never should have been there in the first place.
Thank you. All right, pass it over to okay.
Yeah, just quickly. I introduced the first bill to legalize marijuana a few years ago, shortly after Colorado had legalized it. And, it was a suggestion from a Green Party activist, Mike DeRosa, who sat down with me and we decided we wanted to do this. I explained to people back when drugs were legal, back in the 1920s, when Coca-Cola was putting cocaine in Coke, so that when you drank a Coca-Cola, it'd give you a little lift. And you could go to Chinatown and smoke an opium pipe, and nobody criminalized drugs back then. I tell people, if 10 college kids went into Chinatown and they smoked an opium pipe, 9 would go back and finish their college degree and never go back to Chinatown. But 1 kid would keep going back to Chinatown and drop out of college and destroy their lives. And you know what people used to say back then? Oh, he has a weak character. They felt sorry for him, but nobody sought to incarcerate him. The difference today is that all the issues that were around alcohol back in the 1920s during Prohibition, when organized crime became very strong, filling that market niche and using the profits to control prostitution, illegal gambling, loan sharking, it was the money from illegal alcohol that fed all the violence and crime. Why do we have pushers in the neighborhood? Because they're trying to create a market with our young people. If we knock the illegal market, the floor from under the illegal market, Drugs are really pennies. Nobody needs to cost thousands of dollars breaking into your automobile to steal something they're going to sell for $25 on the street. Because drugs, for a fraction of what we spend on the war on drugs, we could actually have prevention programs, education programs, treatment programs. And that would make a heck of a lot more sense than spending $45,000 a year to support somebody for 20 years in a prison, when for less than that, we could give them an Ivy League education. Now, besides the issue of the war on drugs, which I agree with the Green Party on, there's also another issue. There's over 3,000 impediments to a person who leaves prison. Over 3,000 roadblocks identified by the prison ministry that you face once you become a free person again. We have to make sure that those 3,000 roadblocks are eliminated. You know, where was your last job? How much did you make? These kinds of questions on applications are all to try to discriminate against people who have served as inmates in our prison facilities. And there's over 3,000 identified by the prison ministry. One of the things we could do to make sure that second chance really works is to begin to get rid of all those roadblocks and discrimination, including giving people the right to vote again, to become citizens, to become active, to become productive. We're one of the states to discriminate against people on parole. If you're on parole, you lose your right to vote. If you're on bail or on probation, you can vote, but not if you're on parole. Some states have gone as far as letting inmates in prisons vote, and I'd be for that. I think if you want to turn people into good citizens, part of the responsibility and obligation of a good citizen is to be involved electorally.
Thank you. Pastor, did you have something? Okay. All right. So now, before I'm going to let Mr. Ed Carty ask a question. However, I wanted to just mention that Joan Gibson from the Office of the Secretary of State is here. That Gwendolyn Thames, the president of the Hartford City Council, is here. And Suzette Bowman, mayor of the town of Bloomfield, is here. Where is she?
The Beetham. Suzette Beetham Brown.
I'm sorry. Beetham Brown. Okay. Oh, she left? Yeah, Arja was already introduced. Okay. All right. So thank you, Mr. Carty. You have.
The name is Ed Carty, and I do vote every time there is an election. There's an old Chinese proverb that says, if you're planning for a harvest, invest in rice. If you're planning for a season, invest in trees. But if you're planning for a generation, invest in the hearts and minds of our young people. So the question is on education, partly three-part question. What are the plans that all of you have for improving our schools, the programs in the schools for after-school training? What are your plans in increasing minority teachers in our classrooms? And finally, how can you improve the status of the disparity in education in our state-based and one's demographic? Who wants to mic first?
Thank you, Mr. Carty.
I have a lot of friends who are in something called the Badass Teachers Association. And boy, have I been getting earfuls from them. Education in the United States has been subjected to a form of sabotage that is a repeated pattern and systemic. The people in Washington who wanted to open that huge revenue stream that used to support our public education decided to start cutting funding on the federal level in order to produce failure. And then when they produced failure, they said, look, it's not working. We have to do something. And then they started with No Child Left Behind and privatizing and school choice. And the tests that they hammered our school systems with are only good for determining the zip code of the student who took it. They tell you what the income level is of the students that took the test. That's about all they tell you. They don't tell you anything else, really. And in the meantime, they're doing everything they can to say, see, it's not working and it's not working. Let's get vouchers. Let's have private companies take this up. And it's not doing our children any good. I think we need to go back to the point where public funding for schools goes to public schools. Not, it's unconstitutional for it to go to religious schools. And if we bring that back, I think we need much more support from the federal level, especially when it comes to communities that don't have the tax base to support schools at the level of Greenwich or Fairfield or even Glastonbury, which have a large tax base and a good income, tax income to support schools.
Thank you. All
I
right,
have to
keep it
speak.
to 1
I
minute.
have to speak on this issue. As I said at the beginning, my wife Sylvia and I were both teachers 35 years in the Hartford school system. I was the leader of the teachers union, and I supported all these new models, the charter schools, the magnet schools, the commissioner schools. I supported all these models because I thought we were going to use them as urban laboratories, learn from these new models, and apply the lessons to our neighborhood public schools. But instead, what we created was a two-headed monster that now looks down on the public schools and criticizes the public schools and starts to absorb the resources. And who are they serving? They're serving the kids that probably would have succeeded anyway. And don't believe in the lottery. Lately, there's been a few articles in the Hartford Courier about how the lottery is a farce. You see, if you're a poor kid, you're very unlucky in that lottery. If you're an English limited kid, if you have special needs, you're very unlucky in that lottery. But if you're a middle class kid with parents that are politically engaged, you're very lucky in that lottery. And the few kids that need the most help, that manage to get into one of these schools, they're busted out. And you've probably read the articles of how they're busted out. They keep on suspending them, expelling them until the parents finally give up and pull the kids out. I put the first bill in a few years ago for a moratorium on the creation of new charter schools because they weren't being evaluated. They weren't transparent. The first time, we've always had private education, but it's been privately funded. This is the first time in history that we have private education being publicly funded. I'm for putting money back in those neighborhood schools where 95% of our kids are. And let's rebuild our neighborhood public schools. It's fine that we have a few models, but it's like a little canoe while the Titanic is sinking. A few little lifeboats for a few kids. It's okay, but it's really not addressing the real problem where the real needs are. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have another question. Okay, if we can keep it very brief, I apologize, but I don't want to lose the people. And we have some questions here for the state people that are here as well.
I just have one response. I'll make it very quick. The law firm I work at has been involved for 20 years in a little case that you may have heard of called Sheff versus O'Neill. I am fully aware of the situation going on, especially today with the new federal lawsuit that's been filed with the spaces that remain open in magnet schools that don't meet the numbers. It's a huge issue, and I'd love to talk to you more about it after, but I know I have to be quick. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I have one more question here for the state people in particular. How do you plan to work with individual organizations and the Caribbean Trade Council to introduce and support economic development initiatives that will benefit the state of Connecticut?
I believe that's a crucial issue, and I've been working with Andrew Lawrence on that, trying to see if we can get direct flights from Hartford to Jamaica. And I think that we just recently were able to institute flights to Dublin, Ireland, which has opened up the whole European market. I think that was very good for the state. I think if we can do the same thing between Hartford and Jamaica, that would really improve the quality of life of people in Connecticut and the quality of life of people in Jamaica. And we have one of the largest West Indian communities in the United States, so I believe in those direct flights. I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that we encourage that.
Ed, over here.
Thank you. First, I'll start by saying what he said. But as state treasurer, one of the things, so first, I think it's important for the state treasurer to be totally inclusive of all communities. And in fact, in the financial services industry, the treasurer of the state of Connecticut has a long history nationally of being inclusive of people of color and of women having opportunities to participate in the economic activity that takes place in that office. Now, more specifically, the treasurer, what people don't know is that the treasurer sits on just about every significant board or authority in state government that deals with money and finance. So the airport authority, the treasurer has a seat or the treasurer's designee. The water port authorities, Connecticut Innovations, our venture capital arm, which is charged with investing in early stage and technology in the state of Connecticut. The Health and Education Facilities Authority, the Student Loan Authority. So that's just a broad list, and all of those are potential touch points to engage with the West Indian community in terms of opportunities and participation. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think Chris Service had a question specifically related to immigration. So
Yeah.
thank you, Mr. Service.
Yeah, thank you. Going forward, what would you change on immigration, especially for children or undocumented parents? Undocumented immigrants who have been productive in the United States. How would you deal with it in such a way that they are not discriminated against?
I'm proud to say that Connecticut has been a leader on this whole issue of immigration. We were able a few years ago to pass a state law that allows people to get a driver's license whether or not they have legal status in the United States or not. And people say, well, why should they have a driver's license? So they can get registration for their car, so they can get insurance for their car. If you have an accident with somebody who's undocumented and they have no insurance, you're at a loss as an American citizen too. So why force people to break the law and live in the shadows when we can make it legal? Now, last session, we were able to get something through that helps young immigrants. We were able to get through the financial aid. Basically, kids in our state colleges and universities, when they pay tuition, the undocumented students, the dreamers, they pay towards the student assistance fund, but we're not allowed to apply for any student assistance. We were able to change that discriminatory statute in the last legislative session, so now they can apply. Doesn't mean they'll get it, but at least they have a chance to apply to a fund that they're helping to fund with their own tuition money. So, and we're going to continue in that direction. Connecticut has gone in a completely different direction from the rest of the country. We've become a welcoming state to immigrants.
Thank you.
What I just mentioned, I went down to the legislature and testified for the Dreamers so they get financial assistance. We have open borders, don't we? I can travel from New York to California to Florida across all these boundaries, all these state lines. We have open borders, I think. But philosophically, let's say this. The animals are free to cross borders, right? The wolves, the bears. Why aren't human beings? It's kind of simple, you know? So as far as immigration goes, we have to bring in people around the world. You want money for Social Security? That means we bring in immigrants that will contribute to our economy. And right now, one of the best things going, guess what, guys? Higher education. 75% of people that get doctorate degrees stay in this country. 75%. And they're going to contribute a lot to our society, and that should be encouraged. And I don't think, of course, little kids should be separated at the borders. No.
Thank you. Another question was, what message do you have for Black millennials about where they stand politically in terms of partisan politics. And coupled with that is, what do you plan to do to get the independent vote? Because independent voters are the majority of voters in Connecticut. So if you can address millennials and independent voters in 1 minute, that would be great.
First off, one thing that separates me from the other candidates is I believe in legal immigration. So all I'll say on that, we can talk after if you'd like, because my time is limited. As for millennials and independents, I think being a centrist, I see both sides of a problem and can gather people from both sides to come together to come up with pragmatic responses to these issues that we face all over the country. I think it has to be done in the middle. And I think millennials should stay away from the far left, the far right, and work in the middle, and so we can work together.
Thank you. The next question I have is, Connecticut is the only state in the Northeast that does not have tolls. Why not? And what do you plan to do about this issue?
I'm against the tolls. And I'm against the tolls because as a child, I racked up a huge bill for my parents by using the telephone because I was just calling somebody in the next town over. I don't want to go to the next town and have to pay every time. There are other options out there. This is a tax that will not go away.
I'm against tolls because the way they are collected these days are discriminatory. Now, I know I don't look disabled, I don't sound disabled, but I have substantial disabilities that limit me physiologically. I can't handle, a PayPal account or a debit card or a credit card. So if I use the Massachusetts Turnpike, I have to wait until a bill comes to my post office box, and then I have to pay I have to pay extra because I wasn't able to pay it online, and I have to pay it with a United States Post Office money order, which costs me another $1.25 because I don't have a checking account because I have a memory disability that makes that very dangerous for me. Now, I know there are a lot of poor people in Connecticut who need to travel on these roads in order, to maintain their employment or to get to schools or whatever. And, to me, it's just another extremely regressive tax that puts an excessive burden on people who can least afford it. I have a friend up in Georgetown, Mass., the North Shore. Every time I go to visit him, I take Route 20 because I can't afford the tolls on the Massachusetts Turnpike.
Thank you. One of the questions that we had is, does anyone have a plan to balance the budget?
Boy, is that a bad idea. Really. All of us here have experience with personal finance, and many of us have experience with household finance, and some of you folks have experience with business finance, and you know that if you were to try and run your personal finance, your household finance, your business finance the same way the federal government runs its finance, it would be a disaster. But if you try and run the federal budget as if it were your personal finance or your household finance or a business finance, the disaster would be exponentially larger. And there's a very good reason for that. It's called monetary sovereignty. The United States of America has monetary sovereignty. And one of the most important aspects of that was defined very well by conservative, Republican, longtime chairman of the Federal Reserve, Alan Greenspan, who said, quote, The United States government will never have a problem paying debt denominated in United States dollars. Close quote. Now, I'll tell you something else about budget deficits on the federal level and budget surpluses. Every time there has been a budget surplus on the federal level, it has been followed by a recession or a depression, without exception. And the leading economic analysis says that, yes, it is a causal relation. The problem with our federal budget is not the deficit, it's what's being done with it. And right now, that federal deficit is being used to enrich the wealthiest people in this country who already have more than enough, and to enrich the corporations who are the ones that are paying to buy the politicians. And they're not doing anything to stimulate the economy for we, the people, who are here on the ground trying to stay alive. No, I would not balance the budget, because I know that would be an economic disaster. I would use the power of the federal monetary sovereignty to stimulate the economy where it needs stimulation, and stop, and do something to reduce the incredible levels of income equality which are tearing this society apart from the inside.
Thank you. I had one rebuttal to a question, and that was the question on tolls. It was not answered to the satisfaction of the person who gave the question. There are many software programs that will allow people that live and commute in Hartford or in the Connecticut to pay less, while the other people that come through pay more. So I'm going to give this gentleman my mic at the risk of him taking more than 1 minute.
My name is Norman Townsend, and I'm a professional trucker. I want all those people who object to the toll to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, from between 5 and 10 o'clock in the morning. 95, 91, and 84. Check the trucks that drive on 91, 84. See how many trucks that have a connector plate on it. Go to all the warehouses that is left in Connecticut and see all those trucks that go there and see how many of those trucks have a Connecticut plate. What is the travel from Virginia to Maine, and see if you can travel in any one of those states without paying tolls. Rhode Island just erect toll on 95 recently. No truck that goes to New England without coming through Connecticut. Why are these trucks that weighs 95,000 pounds mashing up our roads for free, while we have to pay property tax on our cars to sustain them?
Thank you.
I agree with the gentleman. I didn't answer the question on tolls, but I support the tolls, and I don't necessarily like paying tolls, but everywhere I go, I pay them. Whether it's Massachusetts, New York, wherever I go, I have to pay tolls. So we shouldn't let people be freeloaders in the state of Connecticut. So I support it. You know, people raised the accident that happened, but that was when we had the old toll booths. Now it's an electronic thing. You don't even have to slow down. It's all electronic. We can also make sure that people that live on the borders, people that have to commute to work, we can make sure that they get a tax break, and we can make sure that the people that abuse our roads really are the ones that carry most of the freight. Now, I just wanted to answer a real quick question, because every time I come to one of these forums, you know, I supported Bernie Sanders in the last election. And and when people equate the social democratic policies of Bernie Sanders as being extremely to the left, I say, you know, democratic socialists are not far left. The only place they're considered far left is in this country. In most of Canada, Europe, and the rest of the world, democratic socialists, first of all, they believe in the multi-party system. They believe in democracy. They operate in capitalist market economies. And every time I read an opinion piece equating the social democrats with the old-style Soviet communists,
It makes no sense. In the old style Soviet communism, there was only one party, and the economy was driven by the state in a 5-year plan. Social Democrats compete, and when they lose the election, they turn over the reins of power to the conservatives and wait their turn again. They believe in democracy, they believe in a capitalist system. So to equate them with a really far left, when most of the world, Social Democrats are considered centrists, it's only here in the United States where the politics have become so far to the right that if you support the old Roosevelt New Deal ideas, you're considered a far leftist communist. I reject that. And I think the millennials reject that. And I think that's why the young people supported Bernie Sanders, even though he was an old geezer.
Thank you. All right. We are going to have to shut it down now. I thank all the candidates that came and spoke. I thank the audience for being patient. And we're going to turn it over to Mr. Donovan so we can get to make sure that no one leaves without registering to vote in the back. Mr. Donovan, thank you.
Thank you so much. And yes, like you just said, we do need to have people vote. There are forms in the back, ladies and gentlemen. We do want to encourage you. And if you haven't, we want to thank all the candidates for showing up and for supporting this very worthy cause. Get some food before what's left. And right in the back, straight in from me, just go straight to the back and make sure you do get a form to vote and register, sign up, and make sure that you encourage others in your community. This is a wonderful forum, and we do thank you so much for your support. And we also have Judith, voters' right, vote of sense. Come on now. Judith, before we go, we want to call you up on stage so you give vote of thanks. And again, go in the back, folks, and make sure you register. Judith is a hard-working woman. She's very active in our community and doing a lot with the youths and with the adults. So here's a young lady that really, really, really stands forth for what the trailblazer truly is.
Thank you, Mr. MC. First, I must say thank you, the Most Heavenly Father, for blessing us with another day. I must say thank you to Mr. Dermot Brown for his hard work in chairing this event, which was indeed educational and informative. Thanks to the candidates for stating their platforms, which will help us to make our decisions and choices when we go to the polls to vote on Tuesday, November 6th. I must give special mentioning to Ms. Suzette Brown, Audrey Wrench, Mr. Luke Browning, Joan Gibson, Reverend Austin, and to our hard-working committee members, Nora Brown, Attorney Schulman, Attorney Tanya Dorman, Diana Jones, Clive Clooney, Christopher Service, Veronica Airy Wilson, Lenroy Grant, Loven Collins, John Davis, Cynthia Jennings, Phyllis Harry, Maxine Robinson Lewin, Michael Chambers, Lessels Reed, Rowan Scarlett, and Brenton Brown. And to you, Mr. MC, Masters of Ceremonies, Mr. Donovan Longmore, for your support to the community as always. To our DJ, Mr. Sheraton Dixon. And we also had him in our audience as the Register of Voting, Mr. Sheila Hall. And we had a couple of helpers with her, Ms. Violet Aldine and Ms. Vicky from the City of Hartford. And of course, to you, the audience, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here with us this evening. A big thank you again. Have a safe journey home. May God bless you. And remember to vote on Tuesday, November 6th. Thank you very much.
And one more thing before we leave. The NAACP, Greater Hartford chapter, one of our very own, Maxine Robinson, she's in the back. I saw her earlier. She's running for president. So please do support her. Max, where are you? There she is in the back. Let's support her, ladies and gentlemen. This is something that's very important in our community, including politics, because you hear all these candidates talk about what's happening, what they're going to do. So let's hold them accountable. And of course, we do support them, so have them support us in return. Thank you all very much. God bless you all. Enjoy the food. Have a safe and blessed